I was just turning 18, or just had, and I'm on the way to the National Boy Scout Jamboree in Valley Forge. It would be years later that I would discover that no bombs had hit those buildings. What had happened in New York City is emergency rent control. And that went back to World War II, because when all these soldiers came pouring back on ships from Europe, rents went through the ceiling. A lot of them said, hey, you know, I'm from down on the farm, and New York City life seems a lot more fun than going back to horse and plow and tractors and pitch and hay. And they got jobs, and rents went through the ceiling. So as an emergency rent control measure, the city of New York said, we're going to freeze all rents. No landlords can raise the rents. But it's just temporary. Well, they enacted that right after World War II. I forget if it was December of 45 or March of 46. I was only a toddler then. But in 64, I saw the results. Buildings abandoned, all the windows broken, hobos, prostitutes, down and out homeless people, drunks, just habitating, and nobody's collecting rent from these apartments. What had happened is when that rent control stayed on for more than a year, they found it politically impossible to repeal it. And temporary rent control became permanent rent control. When permanent rent control was in, people with money said, I'm not building any new apartment buildings just to have rent control freeze my rents, while my maintenance costs keep going up and up and up, and inflation keeps going up and up and up, and I can't raise my rents. That's what they're saying in this article in the association, Apartment House Association. And they're right. What is wrong with the dingbats we have in the state legislature is they don't represent landlords. They only vaguely represent the liberal, uneducated Democrats, only vaguely, and only if they're gay and transvestite and wacky. You know, I was in a funny bar the other day. It had women, a door for a bathroom for women. Then it had a label over here for men, and in the middle, it had a door said for gender confused people in need of a bathroom. I had to open it and look. I don't have a gender problem or knowing what my mental affiliation sexually is, but I had to open it. So I pull open the door. It's a broom closet with a pail there and some Kleenexes and tissue paper and a roll of toilet paper, and it's just a bucket on the floor. Okay, I wonder what the men's room is like. And I went in and it was normal. That just cracked me up. That was funnier than heck. Men on one side, women on the other side, and in between, gender confused people. It's like people aren't satisfied with what God makes you. They got to tweak what God has done. And I'm looking at this rent control. This is for all of California. What's happening is the wacko crazy people said, you know, rents are too high, and they are. In Los Angeles, in the Koreatown area, and many other areas up in Hollywood, a one-bedroom can now cost you anywhere from $1,100 to $2,500 or $3,000. Two bedrooms in this one building I am aware of is an old renovated building. They did a beautiful job of renovating. The rents are $4,000 a month for a tiny two-bedroom that is about 900 square feet. Now, they redid them, and they're all beautiful and like, you know, up to snuff, and they got cables in it. They didn't have cable TV before. But the parking, this is like a 100 and some unit building. They only got like 20 parking spaces under the building, because when it was built, cars were just starting to happen back around 1905 or something. So then they've got 100 units, there's like only parking for 20 people, and they're getting $4,000 a month. All the rest have to park out on the street. Brand new buildings are popping up. They're getting $3,500, $4,000 a month for brand new buildings. But they do give you 1 or 2 parking spaces. If you bring in rent control, say Santa Monica style, or Santa Monica is worse than Los Angeles. Santa Monica rent control is like this. You've been living there 30 years. You're paying $250 a month rent. You've been there, you say you're my age. Your kid moves in with you. Your kid is 30 years old. I die. My kid now says, hey, I'm grandfathered in through my dad. I only have to pay $230. The going rent in Santa Monica on that block is around $6,500 a month for a 1-bedroom unit. And the only way the landlord can get rid of bad tenants or even good paying tenants is to find that they missed paying the rent on time, and then they've got exceptions where they let them get away with it. The result has been all new construction for rental property has stopped in Santa Monica. But they made one exception now. They said if your rents are like luxury apartments and it's over 10 grand a month, then there's no rent control. So what do you think got built, people? Luxury rental property. For the average little guy who's working for 12 or 15 bucks at Starbucks an hour, he can't afford $10,000 a month. So the old people that are there, yeah, it's great for them. They can live on Social Security till they croak in that unit. And that's literally what has to happen. You have to have somebody who dies, has no relatives move in, and then you can redo. But the kind of rent control they're talking now would allow cities to just say, you build a new unit, you put out your rent, and the rent can never go up. Well, with that kind of an equation, let's put it this way. Supposing you own a gas station, and you build a brand new gas station, and you got a gas pump. And you did this, say, back in 1974, and gas was going for 35 cents a gallon. And they put gas control on price of gasoline, which they did in LA for a brief time, a long time ago. Today, the gas station has to pay more than $1 a gallon to get gas. Most of the rest of it is taxes. Road taxes, gasoline taxes, shipping taxes, all kinds of hazardous waste taxes. And so your gasoline prices come in California anyway to $3.50 to $4.25 if you're in Beverly Hills a gallon. Which means if you can't sell it for more than the 1974 price, you're going to go out of business really quick. Or supposing they said, we're going to have a labor control. We're not going to let any labor union raise labor rates more than, 1% a century. So the rate is $10, but you can't live on $10. You need to make 25 or 30, and somebody will pay it, but they can't pay it to you because they put control. That's what rent control is. What happens is the money will flee the area, just like they did in New York City. You'll have slums, and eventually what happened was, I thought, pure justice, because what happened is the city of New York, who slammed the landlords, and a lot of them were Jewish, that's true. Those guys just grabbed what money they could, said bye-bye to New York City, walked away, abandoned. They didn't even try to sell the property. No one would buy it because you couldn't raise the rents. You couldn't even repair. By 1955, you couldn't even repair the buildings for the amount of rent you were getting. All those people left. They came out to LA. The Jewish landlords bought up property, built things. There was no rent control. It was great. We had cheap rents. When I came to Los Angeles in 1974, I couldn't afford a 1-bedroom, I thought. It was $100 a month for a 1-bedroom in a small building that had a swimming pool. Not all buildings had swimming pools. It was an older building. But I got a job as the apartment manager, and I got free rent. Saved me $100 a month. This was long before I filed for PTSD and Vietnam, related issues. Well, that same building that I used to manage in 1974, where I rented singles for I think it was $85, and when I finished being manager and quit, I think it was $1.10 for a single and $1.25 for one bedroom, but you had a swimming pool. And it had a gate to keep outside children from coming in and jumping in the pool. That same building now, those singles are going for $1,500 a month, and they filled in the pool with dirt. There is no swimming pool. It's been capped over. They don't want the liability. They're trying to get their insurance down. So, I have a guest here named Daniel, but we're going to get to him in just a minute because he's got a long story to tell you. And it's an interesting story, worth listening to. I just needed to tell you about this, the negative consequences of Costa-Hawkins repeal. When they put on rent control, they passed this bill, and they said, okay, if you build new buildings, they're free of rent control. Now the wacko, crazy, liberal, socialists, whatever you want to call them, I call them communists, they want to say we're going to repeal this, and even the new buildings built since the 1990s when they put rent control on old rental units, but the new rental units had no rent control. Now we're going to have rent control on everything, and we want to make it statewide. This is so aggravating, it almost irks me to register to vote, just to vote against this bill, or this proposition they got on the ballot, not the bill, but the proposition, if it gets on the ballot. So what I'm telling you, if you want to really see the rental market disappear so there's nothing you can rent, nothing you can afford, and that's already happening. You see 2 and 3 families renting a 2-bedroom apartment and sharing 1 bathroom. You see 2 or 3 families buying a house because they can't find an apartment. 2 or 3 families buying a house. That's happening right now in Santa Barbara County and has been going on for a long time. And let me point out, the city chief of police of Santa Barbara gets a big fat salary. I mean, it's fabulous with all the benefits. They had to bribe him with a housing package because he thought it looks bad when our chief of police won't even live in the city of Santa Barbara. So on top of all the benefits, pension and all that, they said, and here's a whole big pile of money so you can come back in and you can rent a home, because they wanted the chief of police of Santa Barbara to live in the city of Santa Barbara. He was living, I think, up towards someplace like Buellton, which used to be affordable, and quickly that's changing. So when you've got to bribe the chief of police with an extra pay package so he can afford to live in Santa Barbara, something's wrong, and you can't control it by the state. California is over $40 million. Here's my final solution. Forget the Federal Reserve, forget Congress. They don't represent you, they don't care about you. They only care about the corporations. But your sheriff and your district attorney ought to care about you because you elect them, in theory, directly with your vote. You can't control your congressman. They're bribed beyond. That's why everyone wants to be a congresswoman or man. Because the bribery is so good, and they never get, I shouldn't say never, because they did put one from San Diego in prison. He was taking bribes. And there was a famous congressman from Chicago area, Illinois, can't think of his name, Rokankowski or something like that. He went to prison for taking bribes. And yeah, once in a while the FBI does a showcase, say, well, we don't like this guy because he wouldn't fund the FBI special dark box project, so we're going to go after him for bribes. They already knew that all these guys are taking bribes. They just don't arrest them all. Because you'd have to arrest virtually 80% of the Congress, in my opinion, based on what my cousin, who used to work in the FBI, he's retired and dead now, said, they got all these people on tape. They could arrest just about any Congress they want, except Ron Paul, who's not in Congress anymore. He was so squeaky clean, they had to badger him. But I digress. This rent control, if you're asked to sign anything that's going to repeal laws that allow landlords to raise the rents to the free market, rent control is not the answer. The answer is putting gold and silver backing behind our money like it used to be prior to the Vietnam War. Just when I was going off to Vietnam, they started taking the silver out of the coins. And after that, inflation just went rampant because there was no control. There's no gold Forget those YouTube clips that tell you America's the #1 gold hoarding country. We don't have any gold. The United States, neither the corporation United States, created in 1879, nor the organic United States has any gold bars. It's just one plate of lined gold bars at Fort Knox. So when somebody like Ron Paul said, I demand to see it, they'll open it and let them take a peek, and then they shut the door. Okay, go away, Congressman. You had your peek, you saw the shiny gold. But behind that, you think there's stacks and stacks. There aren't. All that was transferred to the World Trade Center, stolen from the World Trade Center. Then they had to destroy the World Trade Center. So the World Gold Depository there on the bottom floors, they never could account for all that gold. It just mystically disappeared. Isn't that interesting? It mystically, how does gold disappear? Think about it. That's a lot of gold teeth. Most people can't even afford to have gold bridges or gold crowns on their teeth anymore. But this rent control thing is not the answer. The answer is getting honest money back, so when a working man earns $10 in gold or silver, he gets a 10 silver dollars. When that was true, I was working at a drugstore at age 17 and 18 for, I think, 25 cents an hour. I think 25 cents was the minimum wage, and then these crazy legislatures down in Madison, Wisconsin, raised the minimum wage to 35 cents an hour. I thought, oh, that's good. Another dime an hour. That means I can go to the movie theater on a 10-cent dime, but it was a silver dime. When our currency is destroyed, we lose all power. Your Congress critters, it's a waste of time voting. You ought to be busy indicting and impeaching under 504 U.S. 36, which was mentioned in that intro when I had Daniel Dizek sitting right here where this gentleman is now sitting, and we're going to get to him in a minute. But I had to read you this article. If you're asked to sign something that's going to bring on rent control, just say no. Remember that phrase? Just say no to drugs, say no to rent control. Just go look at what New York happened in New York. That's what will happen to San Francisco, Los Angeles, Fresno, all the big places. It's a really bad idea. But you're going to see people are high on pot and drugs and other wacky thoughts, pushing it. Then I'll tell you what happens. Then you have such a severe crisis, the cities and the counties will then be mandated to build government housing. And maybe a few special people will be said, hey, you got a couple million. You put in your 5 million, the government will take taxpayers' money and put in 5 million, and you build these units, and we'll give you an exception to rent control. Now we're starting to pick between who's a good landlord and who's a bad landlord. And what do you think? Do you think the little mom and pop guy like me that might own a duplex or a fourplex somewhere in Santa Maria, rent control will kill me, don't have any political power? No, it'll be the guys that own 500 units. So then the little landlord. By the way, the first landlord to go to jail for violating rent control in Los Angeles, the rent control in Los Angeles was aimed at the white, Jewish, rich landlords that own hundreds, thousands of units. First guy to go to jail was a guy that owned, I think, a triplex. He was a black man. That's, in the box said, oh, good, we're going to get rent control. First guy to suffer was an entrepreneur, old black man, and his tenant was, I would have to say, a reasonably crazy wacko. So that's, I'm telling you, real life experience of how that works. Now, my friend Tom Mesereau appears to have lost his case for Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby lost his only son. There's my friend Tom Mesereau. He was on this show here December 10th of 2010. There's Bill Cosby, who used to look a lot younger when he had this comedy show. And it was like one of the biggest things since Amos and Andy, which was a black comedy show when I was a young kid you used to see on TV in the 50s. And most blacks would not want to identify with Amos and Andy anymore. However, there's several things that fit right into the opening with Daniel Dizek. If you watch that whole show, and you can find it on YouTube, what's it called, Reggie, on YouTube? I forget. I uploaded it and I forgot.
Dizek admits California courts are crooked.
Yeah, Dizek admits California courts are crooked. And he names...
Your YouTube channel.
Right, on the William Wagener YouTube channel. Go to William Wagener on YouTube, then put a comment, put Daniel Dizek admits California courts crooked or corrupt. Here's the point. He named the current chief of the California Supreme Court as dishonest, crooked, and taking bribes. He named the past chief Supreme Court justice. And then he brought up the stock brokerage. Charles Schwab, I think, was the name. If I'm wrong, don't hold me to that. But and he's really angry with Charles Schwab. And he says, justice is really not being applied equally, okay? We're going to get to my guest here in just a few seconds. In Bill Cosby's case, his only son was killed at about age 30, I think. He was born in 1969 and murdered by an 18-year-old near the 405 freeway in the hills. And they caught the murderer. How can you punish a man more than killing his only son? His only son. I can't think of any way you could hurt Bill Cosby any more than what's already happened to him. So if he did something that these women were not really on board with, I would say, he's already paid a high price. And at his age in the 80s, I really think a lot of these women, maybe one or two had some justification if they can prove the drugs. But let me say this for Tom Mesereau. He's very astute. He leaves no stone unturned. And I remember when Michael Jackson was on trial in this very city of Santa Maria, not more than 4 or 5 blocks from here, from this studio. And I would say every day, come on, Mr. Prosecutor, show me one witness that doesn't get caught in his own lies. Some of you who watched since 2005 will remember that. And then the next day I'd see the prosecutor snake Tom Sneddon and Ron Zona and Gordy Auchincloss. I'd see him in the court and they'd turn around and look at me. There's that Wagener guy. And what they didn't know, I could read lips back then. Now that I've got older, I can't read lips anymore. But I knew what they were saying about me. It wasn't nice. They weren't saying nice things about me. And that was, before the judge came in and all that. Before most people, I was there sitting usually right behind where Katherine Jackson sat, in the front row of the media section. My point is, everybody was convinced Michael Jackson was going to prison. And when the jury was out deliberating, what did you see on Fox, CNN, ABC, CBS? Oh, Michael might be going to this prison or he might be going to that prison. He's going to prison. The jury's deliberating. The fact that it's taking so long. I got a book coming out this year. This year it will be published on the Michael Jackson trial. And I'm going to show you how really rigged that trial was to convict Michael, even though Thomas Snake Sneddon, I hate saying dirty words like that. I apologize for using bad language like Sneddon. God, rot his soul in hell where it belongs. If you deem that appropriate, God, because I'm not God. Good thing I'm not God, because it'd be a lot of crooked cops and DAs would already be sent direct to heaven. Don't stop, don't pass go, just go directly to heaven where they slam the gate in your face, then you go down and shoot to hell and dance on the flames. Good thing I'm not God. I know a lot of DAs are really glad that I'm not God too. Point is, Michael was innocent. He was always innocent. He was always innocent. And Sneddon knew that. So, with that, we're going to turn to my guest, Dan Borsatti, right? Did I pronounce it right, Dan?
Close enough. Yes.
Okay, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You've had a little brush with unequal justice. Is that true?
Yes, sir. I definitely have. from, well, it started back in around 2001. I was in a horrific car accident, and I ended up having a Social Security representative payee who was acting as fiduciary. And I was dealing with traumatic brain injury, PTSD, panic attacks, anxiety attacks, sleep deprivation, all kinds of problems. And they deemed me disabled, and I needed someone to handle my affairs. So I had these confidants that I trusted, and after all the surgeries and cognitive training, I ended up with a lawsuit, a settlement. And that settlement was pretty substantial.
Over $500,000?
Yes. I'm not supposed to tell because there's allegedly a
Yeah, you can't
gag.
disclose, but it's
Yeah.
all gone. The money's all spent. So what can they do to you?
Yeah. So
I mean, they're going to
yeah.
take the money away from you?